Later this morning, the House Financial Services Committee is going to be holding a hearing on the role of the SEC and whether there's a need for reform at the agency. Joining us right now to talk about this and more is Congressman French Hill. He's the vice chair of the Financial Services Committee. And Chairman, this was brought about, I believe, by the SEC's move to try and require more disclosure from companies when it comes to climate change. You want to talk through what happened and your reaction to that?
Sure. Well, Becky, it's great to be with you. I think Chair Gensler over the last 3 years has just demonstrated how the committee is not being true to its mission of orderly markets, liquidity, capital formation. They've got 61 rulemaking proposals that a lot of them don't have bipartisan support in Congress. They don't have the support of market participants around the country. And now Chairman Gensler is losing in the most important place, maybe, federal court. So recently this week, in the last few days, he issued an 800-page new proposal on climate disclosure for public companies. And while he rolled it back from his original proposal, in my view, it should have been completely reproposed because it's a wholesale change. And it goes beyond the principles-based materiality that has been at the center of all of our public company disclosure.
A U.S. appeals court has temporarily stayed that new proposal from going into play. But your act, why don't you talk a little bit more about that? The Reg Act would seek to do much more.
Right. We're going to propose to push it back using a Congressional Review Act, a CRA. This is the one tool that the legislative branch has with filibuster protection over in the Senate, that when we see a large rulemaking by a federal agency, we can, with a 51% vote in both houses, push back against it. If the president doesn't veto it, or if we override a veto, then that allows the Congress to have done true oversight over the regulatory process. We've seen this a lot in the Biden administration because I think they're going way beyond their statutory mandates, which is not where the federal courts are headed. They're pulling back from the Chevron deference to our regulatory agencies, which I think is good. I think it'll be good for our economy, good for the private sector. And in my view, Chairman Gensler is not following the Administrative Procedures Act in this case, where he has a massive change in disclosure for public companies. He's made changes to his preliminary proposal. I think he should repropose it and take comments again on the material changes that he made.
I mean, Congressman, it's staggering to me, you know, the change we've seen in the last 20 years or so in even talking about this issue. Now, if you are dumping chemical waste in the Love Canal or PCBs in the Hudson, or if you know, in Palestine, something like that, I mean, these serious environmental incidents that a company needs to account for. We're talking about, first, the EPA classifies this ubiquitous gas that we all exhale as a pollutant that's in carbonated beverages. It's not a pollutant. And you're really, with all this disclosure you're talking about now, you're looking out 10, 15, 20, 50 years and tying an increase in purportedly, an increase in adverse weather events for what companies need to be somehow quantifying right now. It's ludicrous. And if you take a step back and get away from the groupthink for a second, it's and we're all just nodding, yeah, net zero, all these decarbonization, all these things that we say. I mean, it's a big leap of faith to get there. What's wrong with us?
Yeah, well, you're right to be skeptical about it. This is where I've been all along. Even if you go back to 2017, when Mark Carney, the former chair of the central bank in London, and Mike Bloomberg put forward a study to create financial disclosure for climate, they basically said it was very tough. They did not support Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. They thought there would be a better way, and they thought the expense might outweigh the benefits, because you cannot do these kinds of calculations across industries and even within industries that are comparable for the purposes of the material financial disclosure in a 10K or 10Q. It's just not possible. You're being held, as you say, to account of something that may or may not happen in the future that we're completely unsure of. And that's not the purpose of an annual financial statement or a quarterly financial statement. We cover climate in the existing risk factors. We cover climate for companies where they believe that it's a material impact on their business. So if you only build in coastal areas, you might discuss it in more detail in your business. If you only insure coastal environments, maybe you're going to change your disclosure in your 10K or 10Q. But it should be material, and it should relate to the actual year in which we're in. And that's what I think the problem with it is.